Hey guys, Jehuty here with another entry in the Tekken 101 series, and today we're tackling frame data in fighting games together with punishment. I believe these two belong hand in hand, that's why I'm tackling them together. So first up, very shortly, what is frame data? Frame data is the information pertaining to the single frames of animation of a given move of a character. So yeah, that sounds kind of complicated, but first of all we have to break down what a frame is. Most fighting games run at 60 frames per second or 60 hertz per second, but what does that actually mean? What that actually means that if we would take 1 second of what is going on screen, we could divide it by 60, and that 1 second which you perceive to be something smooth on screen would actually be 60 individual pictures put together one after another, being played off in a second to generate that what you perceive to be one smooth motion. So when we're talking about frames, or one frame in specific, we're talking about 1/60th of a second. Now let's look at a breakdown of an animation of a move in itself. There are three portions to look at. One is the startup, so when the move starts to go. Then the cutoff point of when the move connects, so either being blocked or hit. And then the recovery animation after that. So the time it takes for the move to finish its animation so that the character can return to the state they were in before the move was executed. So the general rule in fighting games is that if you have a weak attack, it mostly comes out faster and also recovers faster. If you have an attack that does more damage, a bigger attack, it mostly comes out a bit slower and also recovers slower. Now if we look at Tekken as a basis, Tekken's quickest attacks come out at 10 frames. You can look at the generic one jabs or the generic down jabs, and there are only some few exceptions to this rule, like Master Raven's back turn jab, which comes out at 8 frames, or Yoshimitsu's flash, which comes out between 6 and 9 frames depending on the distance to the opponent. So that means if we look at the 10 frames as a basis, which is actually the norm in Tekken, that means that if you throw out an attack, so after you do the startup animation and the move is blocked, if the move is recovering and it needs 9 frames or less to recover, that means the move is safe, because the quickest move that can retaliate against it comes out at 10 frames, or 1/6 of a second. So what happens when we're looking at moves that need more than 9 frames to recover? So they need 10 frames after being blocked to recover, or 11 frames after being blocked to recover, or even 20 frames after being blocked to recover. Well, then we're talking about punishable moves. So what is punishment in itself? Punishing means that you're taking advantage of a move that leaves the user vulnerable for a longer period of time. And these are often moves that are very useful, but then the trade-off is that they can be punished. There's also whiff punishment, which means that the attack which was thrown out doesn't connect with the enemy, so it just hits the air, and the opponent is still close enough though that in the recovery animation of the move they can still punish you. This also means that moves which are normally safe on block can be punished if they whiff. So before I continue explaining, I have to address the elephant in the room, and that is that frame data by itself is not in Tekken 7 by default, it's paid DLC. If you don't want to fork out over the money for it, there's a good alternative for you, and that is rbnorway.org, and they have the frame data for all attacks and all characters. So if you want to go down that route, you can use that. Of course, personally I find it easier to have the frame data right in practice mode as you're seeing here, and it doesn't really cost that much, but if you have your reasons for not wanting to buy the DLC, I can respect that. So coming back to block punishment and frame data, you could theoretically punish every single punishable move in the game with a 10 frame punisher. However, that's not optimal from a damage standpoint, but it's also not possible due to other reasons I'll get into soon. So what does that actually mean? That means that if you block an attack that needs, on recovery after being blocked, 12 frames, you should be using a move of your own that comes out at 12 frames to punish him for using said attack. if they throw out a move that needs 14 frames after being blocked to recover, use a 14 frame Punisher. Why you want to do this, of course, is because you want more damage. So that means in the beginning you should be looking through your moves to see the moves which you're using, at what speed are they coming out, how much frames do they need to start up, and of course how much do they need to recover. Now the other thing is that you should also be looking out for your punishers, which you'll be using to punish other people's attacks. Since there's so many moves in the game, I just recommend you concentrate on the ones that come out at 10 frames, very important, then either 12 or 13, and then your 15 frame Punisher. If possible, also make sure that your 15 frame Punisher is a launcher. That's if your character has a 15 frame launcher. Not every character has that. Once you're done with that, you'd also want to go through your move list and find out where your while rising moves are, because you'd also want to punish low attacks. These are fairly simpler because each character only has 2 or 3 of these, so you should figure them out pretty quickly. And then next up, we'd also like to talk about plus frames. So you would think that based on the fact that each attack has a recovery animation, it would always be negative something, even if it is safe. However, there are certain moves that lock the opponent down when they're blocked. You can actually see them kind of stunned when they're blocked, and these lead to advantages on block. So that means that all of a sudden your opponent isn't -4 after he threw out that attack and you blocked it, he's actually a +4. So that means that if you try to jab and he tries to jab at the same time, his jab will connect before yours. So just keep that in mind. There are a couple of these, however the most dangerous ones are actually the ones that put you in a crouch state on top of having plus frames, so keep that in mind. So now let's look at some general rules when it comes to frame data and punishment in Tekken, because Tekken can be somewhat daunting with so many moves. So first up, let's look at the generic one jab. And the thing with this is that it is normally 10 frames for every character. And the thing is that if it's blocked, it's +1. So if you throw out this, you're actually at the advantage when this move is blocked. And when the move hits, it's +8, so it's even more of your advantage. However, if you use the 1-2 string and it's blocked, it's actually -1, so that advantage falls away. So keep that in mind. Not all jabs are equal, so when it comes out of a string, it is -1. Now let's look at general rules pertaining to high, mid, and low attacks. By now you should know that chunkier mid attacks are punishable in some form. And then you have the low attacks, which are 99% punishable, even if it's just a small punisher like a generic while rising 4. And then you have highs, and these are mostly safe, if some of them are just barely safe. But that also counts for launchers like the electric. You see, the electric is a very good attack, however it's a high attack. And these moves are then balanced out by the mere fact that you can duck them if you can predict them coming. Now comes the portion which I mentioned about not being able to punish every move with a 10 frame jab. You have certain moves that have pushback, and that's where you have to look at your 12 and 13 frame punishers and see which one of those actually covers a lot of distance. Because most of the times you're pushed back and you feel that you can't punish, but in reality if you use one of these moves you can bridge the gap and attack. So most characters have either a 12 or 13 frame punisher that covers distance, so look out for that. Now we also have the Hopkicks, and the general rule with them is that they come out at 15 frames, so they're a good 15 frame launcher if your character has one. They don't always cover a considerable amount of distance though, so keep that in mind. And they're mostly -13 on block, so that means you can punish them quite consistently with 13 frames, even that of Shaheen and even that of Claudio. Snake edges are low sweeps that go underneath highs. They come out quite slow and they launch the opponent off of a low for a full combo. And the trade-off in most cases is that if you block these, you stagger them, and then you can use a while rising launcher punisher to punish them for a full combo. So now in the background you can just watch a couple of moves that you thought were safe but are actually even launch punishable. So that brings me to the end of the frame data and punishment Tekken 101 video. Thank you for watching until to the end. On the Jehuty Gaming YouTube channel you will find, of course, more Tekken 101 guides. If you liked it, leave a like, of course. Tell me what you think in the comment section. Of course, also consider subscribing and of course sharing this video because that helps me out a lot. Anyway, this is your boy Jehuty and I'll see you on the next one.